Dr. Maya stood in her workshop staring at what looked like an ordinary bed frame. But this wasn't just any bed. 3 years of her life had gone into creating this masterpiece. Every bolt, every joint, every curve had been designed with one goal in mind: to build something that couldn't be broken. The metal gleamed under the bright lights of her lab. It wasn't regular steel or iron. This was something completely new. A special mix of carbon fiber and advanced metals that nobody else had figured out how to make. The government wanted beds like this for their emergency shelters and military bases, places where regular furniture just wouldn't last. Maya ran her fingers along the smooth surface. The contract sitting on her desk was worth more money than she'd ever seen in her life. But there was a problem. Her biggest competitor, a fancy company from the East Coast, kept telling everyone that her design would fail when real people tried to use it. Humans are too weak, they said in their presentations. They'll break before any bed frame will. Those words made Maya's blood boil every time she heard them. She'd grown up poor, watching her single mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. Maya knew what real strength looked like. It wasn't about having money or fancy degrees. It was about not giving up when things got tough. Her assistant Jake walked into the workshop carrying 2 cups of coffee. Jake had been with her since the beginning, back when they were working out of a tiny garage with borrowed tools and big dreams. The government people called again, Jake said, handing her the coffee. They want to see test results by next month. Maya nodded, but her mind was somewhere else. She kept thinking about what her competitors had said. The idea that humans were fragile bothered her more than it should have. Sure, people could get hurt. Everyone knew that. But humans had built pyramids with their bare hands. They'd survived ice ages and wars and diseases that should have wiped them out completely. Jake, she said suddenly, what if we did something nobody expects? Like what? Maya turned to face the bed frame. What if I test this thing myself? Not with machines or computer programs, just me, pushing this bed to its limits for a whole month. Jake nearly choked on his coffee. Are you serious? Maya, that's crazy. What if you get hurt? That's exactly the point, Maya said, her excitement growing. Everyone thinks humans are so fragile. But what if we're tougher than we think? What if I can prove that both humans and this bed are stronger than anyone believes? The more she thought about it, the more sense it made. Other companies did boring tests with weights and machines. They showed charts and graphs that put people to sleep. But Maya could do something different, something that would grab attention and prove her point at the same time. She pulled out her phone and started recording a video. Hi everyone, this is Dr. Maya Chen. You're looking at the world's strongest bed frame. My competitors say humans are too weak to really test something like this. Well, I think they're wrong. Starting tomorrow, I'm going to spend 30 days putting both myself and this bed through challenges that will test every single part of our design. Jake shook his head, but Maya could see the spark of interest in his eyes. He'd seen her crazy ideas work before. Think about it, Maya continued, still recording. Instead of just telling you this bed is strong, I'm going to show you. Every day for a month, I'll try new ways to test its limits. Jumping on it, moving it around, seeing how much weight it can really handle, and I'll be doing it all myself. She stopped recording and looked at the video. It wasn't perfect, but there was something real about it. Something that felt honest in a way that corporate presentations never did. Maya, this could backfire in a huge way, Jake said. What if the bed actually does break? What if you get hurt? The whole contract could disappear. Or, Maya said, we could prove that both humans and good engineering are tougher than anyone thinks. Jake, I've been designing things my whole career. I've run every test I can think of on this bed, but I've never actually lived with it. Never really pushed it the way a real person would. She walked over to her computer and started typing. Within an hour, she'd written up a complete plan. 30 days of testing with different challenges each week. She'd measure everything: how much stress the bed could handle, how her own body responded to the challenges, what happened when she pushed both herself and her creation to their limits. The plan wasn't just about proving the bed was strong. It was about proving something bigger. That humans weren't as weak as everyone seemed to think. That with the right tools and enough determination, people could accomplish incredible things. Maya sent the plan to her team and posted the video online. By the end of the day, it had been shared hundreds of times. People were curious. They wanted to see what would happen when a real person took on this challenge. Her phone started ringing with calls from reporters and investors. Everyone wanted to know more about the woman who thought she could outdo both her competitors and conventional wisdom at the same time. That night, Maya lay on her regular bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything would change. She'd either prove that humans and smart design could work together to create something amazing, or she'd fail in front of everyone who was now watching. But as she drifted off to sleep, Maya wasn't worried about failing. She was excited about the chance to show the world what real strength looked like. Maya woke up on day 1 feeling like she could conquer the world. The bed frame stood in the center of her lab, looking sturdy and ready for anything. She'd set up cameras all around the room to record everything that happened. This wasn't just about testing anymore. It was about putting on a show that would prove her point once and for all. "All right, let's start simple," she said to the camera, stretching her arms above her head. "Day 1, test 1. Let's see how this bed handles some basic jumping." She climbed onto the bed and started with small bounces, then gradually increased the height. The bed didn't even creak. Maya felt a surge of pride watching the frame absorb every impact without showing the slightest sign of stress. Her design was working exactly as planned. Jake stood nearby with a clipboard, writing down measurements and observations. "No movement in the joints," he called out. "The frame is completely stable." "Perfect," Maya said, jumping higher now. "See that, everyone? This is what real engineering looks like." By the end of the first day, Maya had put the bed through a dozen different tests. She jumped on it from various angles, tried to shake it by grabbing the frame and pulling, and even stood on one corner to see if it would tip. Nothing fazed it. The bed remained as solid as a rock. That evening, Maya uploaded her first video to the internet. Within hours, people started sharing it everywhere. Comments poured in from viewers who were amazed by what they were seeing. Some were engineers themselves, impressed by the technical aspects. Others were just regular people who found the whole thing entertaining. "This is so cool," one person wrote. "I've never seen anyone test furniture like this before." Another comment read, "My bed breaks if I sit on it too hard. I need one of these." Maya felt energized by the positive response. She'd known people would be interested, but she hadn't expected this level of excitement. Her follower count was growing by the hour. Day 2 brought new challenges. Maya decided to test the bed's weight capacity by loading it with heavy equipment from around the lab. She carefully stacked metal plates, toolboxes, and other gear onto the frame until it was carrying nearly twice the weight of a normal person. "Still no bending," she announced to the camera, patting the loaded bed frame. "Look at this thing, it's not even trying to bend under all this weight." She climbed on top of the pile and bounced gently, demonstrating that the bed could handle both static weight and dynamic movement at the same time. The frame absorbed everything without complaint. Maya was starting to feel invincible. Her body was handling the physical challenges better than she'd expected to. Sure, she was a little sore from all the jumping and climbing, but nothing she couldn't manage. Years of staying active and working with her hands had kept her in decent shape. By day 3, word about Maya's experiment had reached the news. A local TV station sent a reporter to interview her. Maya found herself standing in front of cameras, explaining her project to people who had never heard of advanced materials or engineering stress tests. "So you're basically having a competition with a bed frame?" the reporter asked with a smile. "Not exactly," Maya laughed. "I'm proving that both humans and good design are tougher than people think. Everyone assumes we're fragile, but look at what we can accomplish when we put our minds to it." The news segment aired that night, and Maya's phone started ringing with calls from all over the country. Companies wanted to place orders for the bed. Engineers wanted to know about her materials. Regular people just wanted to tell her how inspiring they found her project. Maya's confidence grew with each passing day. She invented new tests that were more creative and challenging. She tried doing exercises on the bed, seeing how it handled different types of movement. She set up obstacle courses that required her to climb over and around the frame. She even tried having Jake help her move the bed around the lab while she was still on it, testing how stable it remained during transport. Through it all, the bed performed flawlessly. Every test revealed new strengths in her design. The joints remained tight, the frame stayed perfectly aligned, and the surface never showed wear marks despite constant use. Maya began live streaming some of her tests, interacting with viewers in real time. People would suggest new challenges in the chat, and she'd try them immediately if they seemed safe and reasonable. The interactive element made the whole project feel like a community effort, rather than just one person's experiment. Try jumping from the desk onto the bed, someone suggested during a live stream. Maya looked at her desk, measuring the distance with her eyes. "That's about 4 feet, she said. "Let me check the math first." She did some quick calculations to make sure the impact wouldn't exceed the bed's design limits, then climbed onto her desk. The jump was smooth and the bed absorbed the landing perfectly. The chat exploded with excitement. Her team at the lab was amazed by how the project had taken on a life of its own. What started as a simple durability test had turned into entertainment that people genuinely enjoyed watching. Orders for the bed were coming in faster than they could process them. Maya felt like she was riding a wave of success. Her body was adapting well to the daily challenges, getting stronger and more coordinated with each test. The bed continued to exceed every expectation. Her competitors had gone quiet, probably because they couldn't argue with the results she was showing every day. "1 week down," she announced to the camera on day 7. "The bed is still perfect and I'm feeling better than ever. Let's see what week 2 brings." She had no idea that everything was about to change. Maya started the second week feeling unstoppable. The success of her first week had given her so much confidence that she decided to push things further. Way further. She looked at the bed frame and realized she'd only been testing its basic capabilities. It was time to see what this thing could really handle. "Good morning, everyone," she said to the camera, but her voice sounded different, more intense. "Week 2 is going to be special. I think we've been too easy on this bed. Time to find out what it's really made of." Jake noticed the change immediately. "Maya, maybe we should stick to the original plan. The tests are going great. Why change something that's working?" "Because working isn't enough," Maya replied, rolling her shoulders to loosen them up. "I want to prove this bed is absolutely indestructible, and I want to show that humans can handle way more than anyone thinks." She started with exercises that were much more demanding than anything she'd done before. Instead of simple jumping, she began doing complex routines that required her to land at different angles and with varying amounts of force. She wanted to test every possible stress point on the frame. The bed still held up perfectly, but Maya started noticing something else. Her back was beginning to ache in ways it never had before. Not just the normal soreness from exercise, but a deep, constant pain that seemed to get worse as the day went on. "It's probably just my body adjusting," she told herself, but the thought nagged at her. On day 9, Maya decided to test how the bed would handle repeated impacts over long periods. She set up a routine where she would jump onto the bed, do a series of movements, jump off, and repeat the cycle for hours. She wanted to simulate years of use compressed into a single day. 3 hours into the test, she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. There was a tiny crack in the frame. Not in the main structure, but in one of the connecting joints. It was barely visible, thin as a hair, but it was definitely there. Maya stopped the test immediately and examined the crack closely. It wasn't affecting the bed's stability at all. The frame was still perfectly solid. But seeing that first sign of wear made her feel uneasy in a way she hadn't expected. "It's just a surface crack," she told Jake, but she could hear the uncertainty in her own voice. "The bed is still completely functional." That night, Maya couldn't sleep, not because of the bed, but because her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept thinking about the crack, about whether she was pushing too hard, about what would happen if the bed actually failed during one of her tests. But more than that, she was starting to realize that her own body was changing in ways that worried her. The constant physical stress was taking a toll that she hadn't anticipated. Her appetite was off, her energy levels were unpredictable, and she found herself getting irritated by small things that normally wouldn't bother her. Day 10 brought new challenges but also new problems. Maya attempted a test where she would repeatedly move the bed around the lab while performing various activities on it. She wanted to see how the frame handled both structural stress and dynamic movement at the same time. Halfway through the test, she felt something pop in her lower back. Not a serious injury, but definitely a warning sign. Maya tried to ignore it and continue, but the pain was impossible to dismiss. "Maybe we should take a break," Jake suggested, seeing her wince. "No," Maya said firmly. "I'm not stopping. This is exactly what I'm trying to prove, that humans can push through difficulties and come out stronger." But as she continued the test, Maya found herself wondering if she was proving strength or just being stubborn. The line between the two was starting to blur in her mind. By day 11, the crack in the bed frame had grown slightly longer. Still not a structural concern, but definitely more noticeable. Maya found herself checking it obsessively, measuring it with calipers and photographing it from different angles. Her online followers were still supportive, but some were starting to express concern. Comments like, "Maybe you should slow down," and "Are you taking care of yourself?" became more common. Maya found these messages annoying rather than helpful. "They don't understand," she muttered to herself while reviewing the day's footage. "This is about proving something important, something bigger than just whether a bed can handle stress." Jake tried to talk to her about pacing herself, but Maya brushed off his concerns. She was convinced that both she and the bed just needed to push through this rough patch. She'd read about athletes who experienced similar challenges during intense training periods. This was just part of the process. Day 12 brought the biggest test yet. Maya had designed a complex sequence that would put both her and the bed through multiple types of stress simultaneously. She would jump, land, roll, climb, and repeat the pattern for extended periods while the bed was positioned at different angles. The test went well for the first hour. Then Maya started making small mistakes. Her timing was off, her landings weren't as precise, and she found herself having to stop and rest more often than usual. "My body is just adapting," she told the camera, but even she could hear the doubt creeping into her voice. Sometimes you have to push through the difficult parts to get to the breakthrough. That evening, Maya sat alone in her lab staring at the bed frame. The crack had grown again, branching into a small Y shape. The bed was still perfectly functional, but the sight of those tiny flaws made her question everything she'd been doing. For the first time since starting the experiment, Maya wondered if she was testing the bed's limits or her own, and she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Maya spent the next morning sitting quietly in her lab, looking at the bed frame with fresh eyes. The cracks were still there, creating thin lines across the metal like a roadmap of everything she'd put it through. But instead of seeing them as failures, she was starting to see something else entirely. "You know what's interesting?" she said to Jake, who was checking on her injured wrist. "These cracks didn't make the bed weaker. Look at how it's handling stress now." She was right. Despite the visible damage, the bed frame was still incredibly stable. If anything, it seemed to distribute weight more evenly than before. The small fractures had created new pathways for stress to travel through the metal, making the whole structure more flexible without losing its strength. "It's like the bed learned how to be better," Maya continued, running her finger along one of the crack lines. "Instead of fighting the stress, it found a way to work with it." Jake sat down next to her. "Sounds familiar." Maya looked at him, confused for a moment, then understood what he meant. Over the past 3 weeks, her own body had been doing something similar. Yes, she was tired and sore, but she was also stronger in ways she hadn't expected. Her balance was better, her reflexes were quicker, and she could handle physical challenges that would have exhausted her before the experiment began. "I've been thinking about this all wrong," Maya said slowly. "I kept trying to find the breaking point like that was the most important thing. But maybe the real question isn't what breaks first. Maybe it's what learns to adapt." For the first time in days, Maya felt excited about the experiment again. But this time, the excitement came from curiosity instead of obsession. She wanted to understand what had happened to both her and the bed during their 3 weeks together. She started, The final week with a completely different approach. Instead of trying to destroy or prove superiority, she focused on understanding. She measured how the bed's flexibility had changed. She documented how her own body had adapted to the daily challenges. She looked for patterns in how both human and machine had evolved under stress. The results were fascinating. The bed's microfractures had created a network that actually improved its performance in many ways. It could absorb impacts more effectively and distribute weight more evenly. The visible damage that Maya had initially seen as failure was actually the bed becoming better at its job. Maya's body had gone through similar changes. Her muscles had adapted not just by getting stronger, but by learning to work together more efficiently. Her coordination had improved, her endurance had increased, and her ability to recover from physical stress had grown significantly. "This is incredible," she told her viewers during a live stream on day 25. "We've been asking the wrong question this whole time. Instead of, what breaks first, we should be asking, what gets better under pressure?" The response from her audience was immediate and positive. People were fascinated by this new perspective. Comments poured in from viewers sharing their own stories of adapting to challenges, of finding strength they didn't know they had, of discovering that apparent weaknesses could become unexpected advantages. Maya spent the remaining days of her experiment exploring this idea further. She tested how the bed's new characteristics affected its performance. She documented her own physical and mental changes. Most importantly, she began to see the relationship between human determination and good engineering in a completely new light. On the final day of the experiment, Maya stood in front of her camera for the last time as part of the official test. The bed frame behind her looked different than it had 4 weeks earlier. The cracks were clearly visible, creating patterns across the metal that told the story of everything it had endured. But it was still standing strong, still functional, still ready for whatever came next. Maya looked different too. She was leaner, more confident in her movements, and there was a calmness in her expression that hadn't been there before. The wild intensity of week 3 had been replaced by something steadier and more sustainable. "So here's what I learned," she said to the camera. "The question wasn't whether humans are fragile or whether my bed frame could break. The question was whether we could both become something better through the process of being tested." She gestured to the bed frame behind her. This bed didn't fail when it developed cracks, it adapted. It found new ways to handle stress that actually made it more effective at its job. And I didn't fail when I got tired or injured or confused about what I was trying to prove. I learned things about myself that I never would have discovered otherwise. The government contract that had started this whole journey was awarded to Maya's company the following week. But not because her bed was unbreakable. The contract came because her design could adapt and improve under stress, making it perfect for unpredictable situations where flexibility mattered more than rigid perfection. Maya's experiment had gone viral, but not for the reasons she'd originally expected. People weren't just interested in a strong bed frame. They were inspired by the idea that both humans and the things we create could grow stronger through challenges rather than being destroyed by them. Months later, Maya would look back on those 30 days as the time she learned the difference between breaking and bending, between failure and adaptation, between proving a point and discovering a truth. The bed frame still sat in her lab, cracks and all, serving as a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful strength comes from surviving something difficult and finding a way to be better because of it. The real answer to her original question turned out to be neither the human nor the bed would break first. Instead, they would both transform into something stronger, wiser, and more resilient than either had been alone. Maya woke up on day 19 feeling different. Not physically different. Her body still ached from the accident 2 days earlier. But something in her mind had shifted overnight. The desperate need to prove something at any cost was gone, replaced by genuine curiosity about what she'd actually discovered. She walked into her lab and really looked at the bed frame for the first time in weeks. The cracks were still there, thin lines spreading across the metal joints like a spider web. But instead of seeing failure, Maya began to notice something remarkable. "Jake," she called out. "Come look at this." Jake hurried over. still worried about Maya's mental state after her breakdown. "What is it?" "Watch this," Maya said, climbing carefully onto the bed. She moved slowly, testing how it responded to her weight. The bed feels different, more flexible, but not weaker. It's like the cracks created new ways for the stress to move through the frame. She was right. The bed was absorbing impacts differently now, distributing weight in patterns that seemed almost intelligent. The visible damage that Maya had initially feared was actually making the bed perform better in many situations. "That's impossible," Jake said, but he could see it too. "How can cracks make something stronger?" Maya sat on the edge of the bed, thinking, maybe they don't make it stronger in the old way. Maybe they make it smarter. Instead of fighting every impact head-on, the bed learned to bend and flex and redirect the stress. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt excited about her experiment for the right reasons. She wasn't trying to prove dominance anymore. She wanted to understand what had actually happened during these intense weeks of testing. She spent the next few days approaching everything differently. Instead of pushing herself and the bed to their limits, she studied how they had both changed. She measured the bed's new response patterns. She documented how her own body had adapted to weeks of unusual challenges. The results surprised her. Yes, she was tired and somewhat injured, but she was also remarkably stronger than when she'd started, not just in muscle strength but in coordination, balance, and endurance. Her body had learned to handle stress in ways she'd never experienced before. "It's like we both became different versions of ourselves," she told the camera during a live stream, on day 22. "The bed didn't break and I didn't break. We both just evolved." The comments from viewers were overwhelmingly positive. People were fascinated by this new perspective on strength and adaptation. Many shared their own stories of discovering unexpected resilience during difficult times. Maya realized that her original question, what would break first, human or bed, had been based on a false assumption. She'd assumed that stress could only lead to failure. But her experiment had shown something completely different. Under the right conditions, stress could lead to improvement. She decided to spend the final week of her experiment exploring this discovery. Instead of destructive tests, she designed challenges that would help her understand the new capabilities of both herself and the bed frame. The bed's crack patterns had created a natural shock absorption system that worked better than her original design in many ways. When she jumped on it now, the impact spread through the frame in smooth waves instead of sharp jolts. The bed had essentially redesigned itself to handle stress more effectively. Maya's own adaptations were equally impressive. Her reaction time had improved significantly. Her ability to land safely from various heights and angles had become almost instinctive. Most surprisingly, her mental resilience had grown stronger even as she'd learned to recognize her limits. On day 25, Maya received a call that changed everything. The government officials who'd been following her experiment wanted to meet with her immediately. Maya assumed they were concerned about the visible damage to the bed frame and were going to cancel the contract. "Dr. Maya," the lead official said, when they arrived at her lab, "we've been watching your experiment very carefully. We're not interested in the bed frame because it doesn't break. We're interested because it gets better under pressure." Maya stared at him, not understanding. "Military equipment needs to adapt to unexpected situations," he continued. "A bed frame that can only stay exactly the same under stress isn't as valuable as one that learns to handle stress more effectively. Your design doesn't just survive challenges, it improves because of them." The contract was approved that afternoon, with a bonus for the adaptive features that Maya had discovered accidentally. Word about Maya's experiment spread far beyond military applications. Engineers around the world became interested in designing products that could improve under stress rather than simply resist it. The concept of adaptive durability became a new field of study, but the impact went beyond engineering. Maya's story resonated with people who were dealing with their own challenges. Her demonstration that apparent damage could actually lead to improvement inspired countless individuals facing difficult situations in their own lives. Maya kept the original bed frame in her lab, cracks and all. Visitors often asked why she didn't repair it or build a perfect replacement. Her answer was always the same. This bed tells the true story of strength, not the fantasy version where nothing ever changes, but the real version where we get better, by learning to bend without breaking. Years later, Maya would describe those 30 days as the period when she learned the most important lesson of her career. True engineering wasn't about creating things that never changed under pressure. It was about creating things that could change in intelligent ways, becoming more effective through experience rather than being diminished by it. The question that had started her experiment, what breaks first, you or the bed, had revealed its own answer. Neither broke. Both became something better, stronger, and more resilient than they'd ever been before. And that transformation was worth more than any perfect, unchanging design could ever be.